Welcome back to Jack of All Games Tabletop. I'm Dave Wallace, and today we are doing another miniatures painting tips kind of video. This should be a pretty short one, fairly simple, and might just offer you a different style of doing something that you might really enjoy, and that is dry brushing metallics. When it comes to miniature painting these days, I mean, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's fantasy, war games, there's gonna be a bunch of metal involved. Whether it's swords, guns, armor, I mean, there's a lot that you're gonna want to get a metallic finish to, and there's multiple ways that you can actually achieve that. I mean, there's obviously straight out of the jar or out of the bottle, metallic paints, and then of course there is NMM, which is non-metallic metals, which is basically when you are taking your different tones that make up the look and the appearance of something that is metallic and blending them together to make it have that same appearance while not actually using a metallic paint. This is usually a far more artistic approach, something that you would probably practice more if you were working on miniatures, say for display or for trying to win an award. So yeah, taking a look of silver by starting with very dark grays and then blending in a medium grays to light and white highlights in the right places, so that standing off it looks like it's actual metal, but it's not even a metallic paint. So again, for display purposes, that's awesome. Great way to practice your artistic ability. However, in a large scale, especially if you're doing some, say, big commission job like I'm currently doing now, which I'm in the middle of painting Massive Darkness 1 and 2 commission job, it's a lot. It's a lot of, it is a lot of miniatures involved in it, and I can't take that kind of time to paint NMM on every single miniature. Now, on the other hand, the exact opposite, you could just do speed paint. And speed paint metallics definitely are not bad if they're done right. I'm not a huge fan of them. I've used a few, and sometimes I think it looks pretty good. But my favorite style that I have been doing is dry brushing metallic paints on. Now, the process of this is pretty simple, and I do use a variety of different metallic paints. My favorite, like always with all my paints, is Pro Acryl by Monument Hobbies. These are some metallic paints of theirs. I do also use some Citadels. So, but yeah, this really has a lot to do with how you base them. Whether it's straight from the priming or whether it has to do with putting a layer of paint underneath it. The difference being, when it comes to my silvers or my steel look, I'm going to want to do this straight over flat black. Now, that could be straight from your primer, or like nowadays, a lot of times when I do my highlights, because some of these characters will have some speed paint involved in them, so I'm going to end up doing those highlights over the black with grays or whites, and that could overspray onto the weapons themselves, so I'm going to end up repainting a little bit extra black on them. It sounds like an extra step, but it's actually fairly simple and quick to do. So I want to give you some examples just of how these guys work. You can see he's got a lot of silver and metal, steel, and he's got this kind of bronze looking shield to him. I did all this with dry brushing this guy too. He's got a kind of a big copper plate on his shoulder there, and I'll get some better pictures up there, of course, too, as well. But so yeah, the process of this is really simple. When it comes to this guy with all of his armor and his helmet and his sword and even the gloves on this side, what I would do, and if I'm going to dry brush this on, it's going to be one of the first things I do. I used to save it more towards the end until I kind of discovered that with everything else on him, I'm using a smaller, more precision brush, whereas when I'm dry brushing, even though I'm kind of brushing like this, I'm trying to have some control over it, but it's really easy to kind of accidentally dab it onto here. Then you got to touch that up, and I've kind of found that now painting these metal parts is one of the first steps I do after all the priming is done and highlights. Then I'm going to go back through do all the armor. That way when I use my precision to get into these smaller things, then it's going to work much easier. So yeah, as usual, once this thing has got all the solid black on it, I'm going to dip my dry brush, a nice rounded brush, into my metallics, silver tones or steel tones, whatever you got, and of course get as much of that off as I can. Sometimes it's okay if it's on there a little bit more than, say, if I was dry brushing on whites where I wanted it super light. It's okay, because a lot of times with the metallic, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of dab it onto the Mini over those spots. But then you also can kind of brush back and forth in different angles. A lot of times when it comes to the blade, you'll see some video footage here, but I'm going to try and go against that sharpened edge. Now, the reason that this is done, and why a lot of people do this, and why a lot of people like this style, is because it doesn't come across as so boldly metallic that it doesn't look like it's used. Of course, you can just paint solid silver or steel, whatever you want, over top of this, and then go in with Nuln Oil or some kind of wash in order to bring out stuff. But something about dry brushing on, you'll see as you try this out, is that as you're building up layers, they don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect even blend as you're kind of moving things around, especially around the armor. You're kind of picking up those highlighted edges, but there's also creases that aren't getting hit so much. And the best thing about it is it gives it a bit of a more worn look. So it's like, actual useful armor. And that's something that I do like in when it comes to war games, and especially this is a little rat guy. I don't expect him to have just gleaming chrome armor. That doesn't make any sense to me. He's wearing a pretty tattered little skirt there, so why would he have the most perfect armor on top? So the fact that I can kind of dry brush it and make it look more used, more worn, I think that just makes a lot more sense. So I know, like I said, on here you're not going to get the best look at them, but I'll definitely put up some pictures there. So yeah, by using that over top of the black base, the areas that are a little bit thinner or even not hitting, it makes a darker part of that silver or that steel, so that the areas that get hit a little harder, they're a little bit brighter, a little more solid looking, and so your highest edges are going to end up getting hit most on a dry brush anyway. Now, when it comes to bronzes and golds and brass, copper, all of those that have a bit more of that yellowish tint inside of it, rather than doing it over the black, you can do it over the black, but it makes it a little bit warmer if you do it over a brown tone. So getting, whether it's be a warm leather or even a dark brown to paint base real quickly over top of the parts of the armor that you're going to do in that gold or that bronze. And then it's the same procedure. It's just picking that dry brushing technique and just lightly brushing over things, dabbing it in spots, and letting it get, if you don't get deep inside of the crevices there, that's okay. That's where it's going to come out a little bit darker, where it would be, where all the grime from rain and blood and battle, dirt is all going to run into those creases. So it's okay that it's darker there. That's kind of what you want, really. And if you want to add, even just a little bit more flavor over top of that, you could add a little bit of the green oxide and just kind of lightly get that in some spots there, so it looks like it's a little bit more worn and weathered. But yeah, the browns are going to make out differently. It's going to look more like it's the natural metal that has been worn down. So again, you could do that with blacks, but it just comes out a little bit neater, a little bit nicer with the browns in there. I've been using this technique for a little while. Even just found this guy sitting on my desk here, a little Warhammer guy here. Oh, the lighting's working there. So let's see. Anyway, yeah, this metal on him is all dry brushed on in the parts that needed it, and yeah, you can kind of see where the sword is a little bit worn down and everything. So it looks cool. It looks more like these guys have seen some shit, and that's what we want. That's how we make them look more realistic, a little tougher, a little bit edgier. And you can always, of course, splatter a little red on there to get a little bit of blood. Dip your paint in some red and just flick it at your miniature, and there you go. Add a little bit of blood, make it even more worn. But anyway, the point of it is that, you know, again, this is not as fast as if you wanted to go white primer and then put your speed paint metallics over top of it. But like I said, I feel like it's a little bit warmer, a little bit neater looking, and it really is a pretty simple step. If you do it straight off your primer, if you manage to do your dry brushing or highlights over top of them without really getting into those metallic parts too much, then it's actually a really quick procedure. But even if you do, like I said, just a little quick slab of black on there and then dry brush over top of it. Works great, looks really cool, and yeah, so that's it. Just something simple this week, you know. Don't have to get too in-depth all the time, just little steps here and there. Have you tried this? Those of you who are out there miniature painting, is this something that you've heard of before? I know a lot of people, you know, pick up different tips from different YouTube videos, and other people have talked about this. So I'm curious if it's something you tried. Do you prefer it, or maybe it's just too much for you? Maybe rather just stick with speed paint, or maybe you're like, hey, hardcore artist here, I gotta go NMM. And I get that. When I'm doing a big job like this, it's really more about efficiency. So I can't charge people $10,000 for the amount of hours I would put for one, you know, game full of miniatures. So yeah, anyway, I'm curious what you think of this procedure. Is it something you tried? Let me know. I'd love to see some pictures if you got any. I'd love to see what you got. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, get out there and roll some dice. Thank you once again for watching Jack of All Games Tabletop. I really appreciate the support, and if you wouldn't mind, maybe give it a little thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Of course, I love reading your comments, and with any questions, suggestions, or corrections, feel free to leave them in the comments. Or, of course, you can always get a hold of me at jackofallgamespt@gmail.com. And if you're a game designer and you want to talk about your game on the show, I'd love to hear from you, so drop me a message. And now, I will persuade you to hit the like button with a persuasion roll. Well, turns out I have advantage on persuasion rolls. Yeah. I believe I have 1 point of inspiration left. So, yeah. Hey, check out my hot wife. Yeah, she's always distracting me. Aha, and as you can see, I have rolled a natural 20. Therefore, you are persuaded to hit the like button. And now, thanks to my power of persuasion, I know that I will see you next week.